your tags sound a little bit more powerful and better in debate. Alright, so what is needed in a citation? Okay, so first of all, there's two components to a citation. What's the first one? Yeah, I call that the quick cite. It's just, the author's last name and the year that was written in. Sometimes it's different. Sometimes people, when they're trying to use these cards, like if they had a card from yesterday, they kind of just put like June 19th on the card instead. So for the most part, here we'll be only writing the year and date. What's the second part of insight?
Full name and qualifications.
Alright, so we need the full name, sometimes qualifications. What else? Yeah?
The source.
The source, yeah. Title of the article. What else? Sorry? Yep, access date. The publisher, sometimes. The publisher, you want to do a lot of times when you're cutting like cards out of books, but a lot of times when you're cutting just like an article out online, that's not going to be as easy to do. There's one more thing, especially that's really necessary at the camp here. Yeah, URL, we said that. One more. Alright, the thing that has been a policy here in the tags at UNT is at the end of every tag, every site, is we put our initials. This is to keep people honest, to make sure if someone's, fabricating evidence, we can figure out who cut the card. So we want to keep the initials on the evidence at the end. So at the end, I'll just be like AS. Obviously, yours is different, so that's what you need to do. Here's an example of it. Normally, I put the last name and then the year and quick cite, and then the other. And one thing you should keep in mind is that when you're writing citations, the order is not as important as making sure you have all the information. So like this order, this right here, is really just like, I'm making that noise again, aren't I? Yeah? How do I stop it? My necklace? Huh? Okay, so this order right here is the order that I always order the volume. Hello? Yeah. Alright, sorry. So, this is the order that I always write my cites in, but really a lot of people have different opinions. It's not really a different opinion, just like kind of like a habit, what you want to do. So, this is what I always do it in, and the one thing that you keep in mind is that to make sure that you end up having a complete cite at a time, you probably wouldn't do the same order every time. So that's a system, and that's just the way that I end up doing it. So author's last name and year, and then within the parentheses, I have first and last name, qualifications, full date, when I access it, article, title, name, when I access it, URL, and then my initials. So just to go over that real quick, why do you think qualifications are important? Yeah. So a lot of times when we're doing evidence comparison, qualifications is a good starting point, especially on certain issues, like if you're writing, if you're going on a global warming is real, not real debate. If you have evidence from like qualified scientists, you're probably going to be in a better shape than if you're like coming from the Wall Street Journal or something like that. But the full date and article title name, those are important just in the context of if someone wants to go back and get the piece of evidence I did. The most important, there's two really important parts about citations that you should always keep in mind. The first is that the citation should help you win an evidence comparison debate, like I just said, in terms of qualifications, as well as in terms of date. So we have the full date there, so I can way against other teams. The second thing you want to be able to do is allow someone else to go back and cut that piece of evidence after you have given them the cite. So if I have a 1 and 2 card, and someone wants that piece of evidence, I can give the citation, and the first 3 words and last 3 words of the card. And so someone else can go back and get it. So the article title name and the URL are really important to that, so people can go get it back themselves. What do you think? Okay, so the date access is just when you saw, and it's like actually it's really only for internet resources. If you, why do you think that's important that you write down when you actually use evidence? Yes, websites change. Yeah. But websites, they do change. Sometimes they go offline. A lot of times, like New York Times articles, they go into like their back files. I don't really know that's the right term, but then they are unable to retrieve them over time. So that's really important.
All right. Well, before we move on, one thing that you should know about putting the URL is that sometimes putting the URL is not only is it not necessary, but it's not really helpful. For example, if you find an article on Lexis, Texas, it's going to give you a really long URL. Or if you put that back in to your web browser, it's not going to bring you to that article. It's just going to bring you to the login screen, and that's not going to really help anyone. So if you get it from an electronic resource that we have here at the library, just put the name of that resource. So if it's from Lexis, Texas, instead of putting the URL, just put Lexis, Texas. That's why it's so important for you to put the things like the name of the article and the source of the article so that somebody can backtrack it without just having to copy and paste your URL.
That's a good point. I kind of forgot about that. So, briefly before we go on to what are the components of a complete file, these are some macros, synergy versus limit to get when you're cutting evidence. There will be some more discussion on this in the next lecture, because the next lecture is about debating paperlessly. Actually, like debating in the debate with your paperless. But these are some different macros between the two. Don't feel like you have to write them all down right now, because they're all in the manuals that come with these things. Actually, people who did not raise their hand when studying synergy of Whitman, I think for the majority of everyone, I'm not entirely sure, don't tell me this, but thinking that almost everyone is going to have to debate paperless at this time, or at least try it out for a little bit, see if you like it. So you will need to download something like Synergy or Whitman. I've heard for the most part that most people who have PCs use Synergy, and most people who have Macs use Whitman, and I think I'm fairly certain you can use either on both. It's just that those are more compatible with each other. I would use Synergy, that's my opinion, that's what the integration uses, and so if you have a question about Synergy, besides what we don't talk about on the question today, you know it's going to be one of us, and we can help you out, versus, I think, people who use Whitman, I think, are Sarah Screen, Josh Gonzalez, and I'm not sure who else, so keep that in mind. These are some macros that you can use, which just means that a macro is just a programmed formatting on your computer. So, for example, if you want to do something like a heading, the block header at the top of the page, you can hit F3 and automatically move your size of text as well as bold it and underline it. So that will help out when there's cutting cards go quickly. So again, we'll talk about this a little more in the next lecture. One more thing I want to talk about before we talk about the complete file is the importance of keeping a database. What I mean by that is that there's 2 different ways. For example, the way UNT does it is we have a Google Doc, but in Excel format. And so every time we cut a card, we have many different tabs on our Excel document. So if someone else finds an article, they can, if there's like, for example, if I'm working on SPS, but I find an article for the healing the app or something like that, I can just put it into an Excel document, and that way that someone else who's working on it can go back and find it. So it's not just kind of like lost. That in mind, if you find a piece of evidence when you're cutting evidence that isn't on your research area, you should go ahead and at least get down the URL or the article name so someone else who is working on that can go back through. The other thing is, The second bullet point here is, this is especially true while working at debate camp here. All the lab leaders are working differently, but the way that I think some of us are working is that we're going to, if you want to cut an article, if you need to be found an article, you keep the entirety of the article there. So you keep a back file of the article that you already cut, so you can go back through and check and see if you've missed any evidence or missed any cards in the article and go back through. This is really important. Also, in the database, we have a tab for different think tanks and databases that are important. So we have, for our topic, we have a big long list of different democracy assistance, or different college topic databases. So I put something for your squad or maybe your lab while you're here. You can have one that shows different think tanks that you can click on and then go search for your assignment there. Right. Now we're just going to talk about hard to complete files.
Okay, before I start, just a quick show of hands. Who in here has not cut a file? Alright, I mean, that's fine. This is, debate camp, you're here to learn. Evidence production is obviously an important part of policy debate. It's like basically the only thing that we can do outside of the round to prepare and speaking drills is to kind of make sure that we're researched on the topic, we have evidence, and that we are ready to debate on a wide variety of topics. And the way that we do this is that we put all this evidence together in files. However, there are right ways and there are good ways to do files, and there are some ways to do files that kind of hurt you in debate rounds. And I'm going to talk about some, I guess, just some good techniques to make sure that your evidence is organized and that you know where to cut it. Because I can tell you from experience that there's not really much worse in a debate round than not knowing where a card is. Has that ever happened to anyone before? Where you're in a round, you know you have this piece of evidence, but you cannot for the life of you find it. Okay, I guarantee this will happen to everyone at some point, or it gets really difficult. So here is the space debris disad that I've taken formatting out of. Let me put it in the paper here. What you'll notice, first of all, is just here on the document map, we have a bunch of lists of categories of arguments. So all of this is our uniqueness arguments. These are all of your links, and then we have impact. Now, while these are technically correct ways to kind of arrange your arguments, that's not going to be really helpful for you because there are a lot of different kinds of link arguments that you might be able to make. For example, some of these links are to space exploration, some of them are to satellites. Obviously, you don't want to read a satellite link to the mining app because you'll just get laughed at in process, and then you won't have a link to your disad. And links are pretty important when it comes to disad. So obviously, you want to be able to find the arguments you have. Also, not all uniqueness arguments are created equally. There are uniqueness arguments related to the link. There are uniqueness arguments related to whether or not government policies are happening now, whether or not other people are stepping in. Obviously, it's easier for you to find these articles in a debate round if you have them separated, which is why it is possible to have more in your header than just uniqueness. You can add uniqueness, space debris low. And then you'll know that these are the cards talking about whether space debris is low. That way, whenever someone says, oh, there's actually a lot of space debris, your disad's not unique, you're not going to be like, that's not true, China can fill in. And then, again, embarrass yourself. So one of the things that's important is make sure that your headers, you don't want to write like a paragraph. You don't want to put your card in your header. Obviously, that's not useful. But you want to make sure that you can look at the header and know what argument you're making with that. Because there's a difference between a type of argument and an actual argument. Which is a good way to avoid, I guess, embarrassing yourself. If you'll notice on the final product, you have things like lasers coming now, space debris low. This will actually be able to use in a debate without a whole lot of planning. Also, if you'll notice, there's not really any separation. So like, for example, let's say you have a 150-page Space Mill good bad file, and you want one card that says Space Mill's key to hedge, and it's on page 73, and every page either says link or index.